We are contaminated by dogmas of all kinds precisely because we have a terrible laziness to think. And a dogma of all kinds, religious, political, artistic, whatever it may be, from this moment and all moments in history, a dogma is necessarily driven by passion. And passion necessarily has hatred as its other side. Hello, welcome to our final conversation on the meditations of Marcus Aurelius, always so useful, so fitting, so comforting in times of difficulty. Today we will look at chapters 10, 11, and 12 of the Meditations. Once again, I hope you are reading along and making your own reflections. Shall we begin? So, we begin with the 10th book. O my soul, when will you become good, simple, unified, more important than the body that surrounds you? When will you reach the state that is only tenderness and love? When will you be enough for yourself without lamenting or desiring anything? Living in the communion of gods and men? When will you be such that you no longer have complaints or be condemned? In other words, this moment will be the pinnacle of our evolution as human beings, where our soul blooms like a lotus flower with all human potentials realized in such a way that it fulfills itself in being. Do not have expectations of what others can give you or deny you. Do not blame others for anything. Be enough for your own peace and serenity and consequently happiness. And may this state of well-being, of being with oneself, this certain autonomy that a fully realized human nature provides, leave a halo of peace, of harmony, wherever we go. That it may truly make us a contributing factor, a light amidst humanity. Notice, remember, if I still had that habit of putting a poster board on the closet door, this would be the paragraph I would write down. Do you want to know where you need to arrive? You need to reach this state of soul. Perfect, autonomous, like a lotus that rises above the mud, the dirty water, the air, and opens its petals completely unscathed. In other words, above the circumstances. Everything that happens to you has been destined for you since all eternity. In the same weave, your existence and this accident will be intertwined according to the inevitable chain of causes. This, out of context, might seem controversial, but you'll agree that it is perfectly consistent with Stoic philosophy as a whole. In other words, life is cosmos, not chaos. All harmony, all unity, all order that exists can only exist because there is order around it. We have an ordered body. Is our body the only ordered thing in the universe? If it were the only ordered thing, there wouldn't be an ordered system in nature to regularly provide it with food. It wouldn't be able to survive. And if there is an ordered system in nature to provide food for our body, there must be a certain ordered system on the planet as a whole to give us seasons to provide rain, so that this nature can provide food. And for the planet to have this order within the very system it is in, there must be an order where it can occupy its place, maintain its orbit without major alterations. Do you know what that means? If there is order in one point, there must be order in the whole. If at this moment you believe that your thought has order, your thought is proof that the universe is ordered. And if the universe is ordered, nothing happens to man that is not inherent to man. Nothing happens to the earth, nothing happens to the solar system, nothing happens to life as a whole that is not inherent to life as a whole. Imagine that you came into the world. Like all beings, you come into life to evolve for your development to reach the fullness of your condition. And this need for growth is like a magnetic card that you brought into life, which magnetically attracts the experiences you need to live, to climb the next step of the ladder. Therefore, you attract to yourself the experiences you need to grow. And those who provide these experiences are unconscious agents of your need. If it weren't this person, it would be another. If it weren't the circumstance, it would be another. But you would need to go through that. And when we all go through a great difficulty together as humanity, surely, if we didn't go through it, we would risk continuing to evolve as humanity. We need this experience to move forward. In other words, this idea from Marcus Aurelius that there is no chaos and that all events obey. A call to beings to continue on their path, to equip them to continue on their journey, is something very beautiful. Carl Jung used to say that every time we approach a portal, the dragon guarding that portal appears. In other words, when we want to grow, we encounter the dragon that we must defeat to move forward. The difficulties were summoned by us. We think we don't have a dragon inside our house. Why? Because we don't get off the couch. So sometimes we only see a little tail slipping out the door, and we think we have a little tail. Now, when you get up and want to cross the portal, you'll see that it's not just a little tail, it's a huge dragon, breathing fire. You might say, wow, a dragon appeared. It didn't appear, it was always there. You simply didn't pose any threats. Now you want to grow, so it's necessary for it to appear in its entirety before you. This applies both individually and collectively. The challenges are what we need to face in order to move forward. If they didn't exist, we might enter a chaos we can't even imagine. Try to do an imagination exercise. What would have happened to me if I hadn't overcome that difficulty? Perhaps we would have entered a chaos, a disaster of incalculable proportions. And we consider the challenge as negative as a curse, and sometimes it's our redemption. I will not rebel against any of the vicissitudes that the whole has reserved for me. For nothing bothers the part when it is useful to the whole. And there is nothing in the whole that isn't useful to it. That is evident. If there is logic and order in life, in the manifestation as a whole, what arises in the whole is what serves to better equip it. It's like the vertical dimension of the ladder, which I often talk about. If we consider this idea and face the concept of good and evil, it would make for an excellent philosophical discussion. We will realize that unity and wisdom up above are only achieved thanks to both good and evil. The evil that places an obstacle before you forces you to overcome it, to reach another level of good. Perhaps when we reach the top, we realize that nothing is truly evil. Everything was necessary. And what is necessary, what makes us grow, ultimately works for the greater good. So, nothing happens to the whole that isn't good for the whole. And what is good for the whole cannot be bad for the part. This serenity takes away our panic. It removes the agitation from us, it removes the rebellion from us. And when you strip away all these things, you begin to reason with clarity. Understand that this isn't just a philosophical reflection, it's advice for overcoming difficulty. Because you only overcome difficulty with willpower and intelligence. And when you do this, accepting things as necessary, you calm your emotions and reason begins to work. In a much more enhanced way. At the height of panic and agony, no one can think clearly. And without reasoning, no one finds good solutions. By accepting life as it is, you find peace. Emotions and intelligence rise, generating good ideas and willpower, the iona. Relative to the part similar to me, I will strive to do nothing that could harm society. On the contrary, always keeping my neighbor in mind, I will dedicate my actions to the common good and refrain from anything that could result in harm to others. Imagine that the comparison between a human body and humanity as a whole is not just a comparison, but a truth. That we, humanity, truly are one body. And what harms the part tends to harm the whole as well. And it can kill the whole. So, it's foolish for a cancer cell to think that something can be good for it when it kills the body. It's necessary for each cell to think about the well-being of the whole. If we don't have health, we don't have life. And if we don't have health and life in the body, we will have even less for ourselves. This is a habit, folks, that Stoicism teaches. Before making any decision, consider if it is the best possible choice for the whole, not just for yourself. If you get used to it, make it a life habit, always asking yourself. This question will lead you to make increasingly wise decisions, contributing more and more to a healthy body. Look, we are actually fighting against a single enemy, which is selfishness. Don't forget that. When you separate yourself from others, you become a cell that helps the body decompose. And a decomposing body is a dead body. Having received the qualities of being good, modest, truthful, sensible, resigned, magnanimous, strive not to deserve their opposites. Having lost them, regain them. Just as the fig tree should conduct itself as a fig tree, the dog is a dog, and the man is a man. In other words, having achieved these qualities in the eyes of your own conscience. You don't deal with fame, no. Your own conscience must be the first, the only, sufficient witness to your greatness as a human being. If you can say before your conscience, today I was good, modest, truthful, sensible, resigned, magnanimous, you deserve the sleep of the just. The great strategy is always one step at a time. Remember this. If you look at a staircase with 1,000 steps, you will become discouraged. Wow, I can't handle it. Just look at the step in front of you and say, today I will be all these things. Well, great, I did it. And tomorrow, are there 999 steps? No, just one. And by doing so, you keep climbing, each step one at a time, giving your best. By doing this, you give your response as a human being to nature when it calls upon you. What he says here at the end, I think, is the most beautiful thing of all. Let the fig tree conduct itself as a fig tree. When nature says fig tree, bears figs. Let the dog conduct itself as a dog. When nature says dog, it exercises its instinct for survival, for the perpetuation of the species. Let man conduct himself as a man. When nature says man, may you respond with values, virtues, and wisdom. To your spirit, only one thing matters: to carry out with justice what is your responsibility. Love what is happening to you now. Free from business and caring for others, desires nothing but to stay on the straight path, following the one who always walks it, God. Aspiring to the straight path, following the one who has walked this path, this Dharma, this arm of God extended over the cosmos. Look at this interesting thing he's going to say. To the spirit, only this matters: removing any interference from a concrete mind, full of contaminations, passions, hatreds, preferences, sectarianism. Silence all of that and listen to the only voice that matters to you, which is the voice of your duty as a human being in the world, and feel challenged by adversities. This is what the Stoics call amor fati, love for what happens, not simply accepting, but loving it, which seems paradoxical to modern man. But notice once again that example I often give. It's like the little boy who loves a game, and you give him an easy game, one without challenges. You'll have a child who thrives on challenges, who feels excited because they know that if they overcome them, they'll reach a new level of skill. We know that by overcoming these difficulties, we will be at another level of skill on another plane closer to God. Therefore, for the spirit, being in motion towards God is reason enough for happiness. If you don't give it a ballast, an anchor that holds it in place, it will keep moving, regardless of any circumstances. May we turn a little more inward and listen to what is the happiness of the spirit. You will be surprised. It only needs you not to get in its way. He knows how to see things. He just needs you to listen to him. And that is the inner life. If we consider today, we are contaminated by dogmas of all kinds precisely because we have a terrible laziness to think. And a dogma of all kinds, religious, political, artistic, whatever it may be of this moment, of all moments in history, a dogma is necessarily driven by passion, and passion necessarily has hatred as its other face. Notice this, how curious, how interesting. It's almost like an axiom that you can view in this way. If you have a dogma, you will have passions. If you have passions, you will have hatred. Dogma is sustained by this duality. The free man, who doesn't dogmatize anything, who learns from everything, who desires nothing more than to be what nature made him to be, which is human. He is free, he soars above things. He doesn't feel the need to accept a certain way of thinking. Standard. He doesn't feel the need to impose a way of thinking on himself. He doesn't feel protected when he thinks along with everyone else. Quite the opposite. Free. He can see things from above, and seeing from above, he sees in a panoramic, much broader way. This man, he is protected, and he has a much greater ability to hear the voice of the Spirit. Take this idea into consideration. Dogma breeds passion, passion breeds hatred. And we can say that this duality, passion and hatred, has been eroding our common sense, our humanity, as it has done in many other moments in history. This is not the time to lecture on what a good person should be, but rather to start living as a good person. Look, it's no longer the time for so much talk. It's time for us to say, this idea is good, I'll try it out in my life. I won't take it as dogma, but I'll try it out. Does it take me a step forward? Does it elevate me? Does it free me a bit from this ballast of crudeness, of animality, of the collective? Does it truly make me more human? It's important for us to start realizing that it's time to take ideas and not just collect them, but put them into practice. Those ideas left by men who knew how to live well. They are not copyrighted, they were made to be put into practice and tested. It's like if a component of your TV was faulty and you bought another one. You bought it, but instead of replacing and using it, you stored it away in your drawer. Of course, the condition of the TV remains terrible. It would be madness, it would be foolishness. You only know if a component is good when you put it in the TV and the picture turns out great. You only know if knowledge is good when you incorporate it into your life and life flows in a much more human way. It's time to live the knowledge. Test the truths with practice, as Blavatsky used to say. Consider that only the rational being was given the ability to obey voluntarily, even though it is a general imperative to simply obey. Look how beautiful this is. A plant was born to be a plant, a stone was born to be a stone, an animal was born to be an animal. There's no chance a plant will come to you and say, "I'm stressed from doing photosynthesis, I'm not going to do it." It doesn't have free will, it is governed by the laws of nature. No matter what happens, it will perform photosynthesis. The animal cannot say, "I'm tired of instincts." No, it will follow its instincts. It is governed by the laws of nature. Now, the human being, who also has a role as well defined as plants and animals, which is to seek the pinnacle of human nature in values, virtues, and wisdom, has the option to pursue it or not, for a very simple reason. Man possesses reason and human reason. To develop, it needs to be used. Man needs merit, needs to make his own choices, so that these choices help him evolve, but they cannot be imposed. Let me try to explain this to make it clearer. A person lost a wallet and it's on the ground. And then someone goes to pick up the wallet and I see them and say, "Look, if you don't return it to the owner, I'll report you." This person gets scared of me and returns it to the owner. Was that a virtuous act? Of course not, she was forced. I coerced her, she had no other choice. Now situation 2. This person arrives there and finds the wallet. She could use some money, she's strapped for cash, or would like to have a bit more, and no one saw. Do you realize that a range of possibilities opens up before her? A range of possibilities. One of them is to return it to the rightful owner, to give it back to the owner. if she is able, in this world of possibilities, to choose this one that was virtuous, because she chose freely being able to do anything. And this free choice of good, amidst countless other possibilities, is what allows man to evolve. Therefore, man cannot be under tutelage. Only what can be chosen through reason has moral value. Taxation does not denote moral value. That's why I often argue, if you approach a society and say, if you act this way, you will be the most cultured and developed people in the world. They will be admired by everyone, you will be the best, and people do it out of vanity to be the best. That has no moral value. On a certain day, when they realize they are not the best, not at all, that this is not enough to make anyone better, they will do anything, because it wasn't a conscious choice guided by the idea of good. This is conditioning, this is training. A trained man never becomes a true man. He must have the freedom to choose the best, to choose the good. Do you know why? Because I am a man and nature expects this of me. Because I owe it to myself and find fulfillment in doing what is my duty. Nothing makes me happier than being human. To pause at night and look at my trail during the day and say, this is the trail of a human being. Because looking at my trail, one will know a human being passed through here. I honored my role in the world. That is human happiness. And only this, in fact, makes us grow. Why isn't it enough for you to cross with dignity the short space that was granted to you? How many times do you abandon the opportunity to act and reflect? Just as a healthy stomach assimilates food, like a blazing fire turns everything thrown at it into flame and light, it endures. Even Cecilia Merel spoke these truths. In other words, we have little time. Our passage through the scene is short, quick, fleeting. And don't think I'm talking about someone who dies prematurely. I'm talking about a normal life expectancy of a human being. It's fleeting, it's very little time. Within this short time, we must make our presence felt as human beings. We must do what is our duty. How many opportunities do we abandon to do so? And what do we exchange? What do we exchange this opportunity to be human for? It's important that you pay attention to what is. That's why I always recommend that people draw a mental line that connects you to your human ideal. And every day, keep a nightly journal where you ask yourself, did I walk towards my human ideal? Or not? Or did I remain still? Or did I go in another direction? And when I realize that something has pulled me away from myself, I will know what kind of thing I am exchanging for my human nature. Is it worth more than my human nature? I have a weakness that pulls me in that direction. I will seek through reflection to prepare myself so that at a certain moment I pass by and that thing no longer steals me from myself. I know many of you are very young, not from my time, but I remember that in my time there was a certain TV show where a person was placed in a soundproof booth and someone stayed outside. You trade your brand new car for a piece of gum. Yes, no, I had a lot of fun with that. I was a girl. I keep thinking, wow, how we do the exact same thing in life. We trade our human nature for a piece of gum, sometimes even less than that. We are listening, we are seeing, we are clear-headed to know what we are doing with our time. Think about it. In my current circumstances, what is the best thing to say or do? I shall say it or do it, whatever it may be. It is necessary, however, for a person to find joy in every activity that aligns with their nature, and this is always possible. But the spirit and reason can walk according to their nature and will amidst all adversities. See, it's interesting. Nature expects me to be human at this moment. I have this option in my next step to do what is expected of a human being. In other words, speak the right word that brings comfort to those who hear it, say what the other needs to hear, or say nothing at all, remain in a dignified but attentive silence, knowing how to listen. What does nature expect from me in this next step? I will do it. Today, I will focus on taking steps along the human path within the human dharma, as the Hindus say. But I don't like that. All right, I'll do it without liking it, out of duty. And throughout my day, throughout my life, I begin to think about these things and grow fond of them, because our taste is shaped by our will. If we don't take the reins to shape our taste, to refine our taste, it will be formed by random factors from our environment. In general, not so human nor so good. So take the reins to refine our taste. First of all, do today what I must because I must. Secondly, do it because I must and because I like it. Because I learn to refine my taste and to enjoy what makes me grow as a human being. And reject that which causes me to regress into a state of brutality. All things are fleeting, yet you avoid or seek them as if they were eternal. A little more, and your eyes will be closed. And as someone mourns you, soon another will mourn them. In other words, soon we will no longer be here. And those who mourn our death, quickly, there will be another mourning that person's death. And very quickly, we will already be remembered. I recall a story I shared in one of my lectures, though I can't remember exactly when. One day, I was living in an apartment building at the time, and I went to throw my trash in the dumpster. There, inside some plastic bags, I saw something. Many photo albums, those yellowish ones with Kodak covers full of pictures in the trash. Of course, I didn't go rummaging or see what it was about, but my imagination quickly started to work. Could it be that there's the story of someone who, after 1 or 2 generations, no longer matters to anyone? That person who was so keen on taking 1,000 photographs of their personality everywhere. And that, after they no longer exist, perhaps there aren't many descendants interested in their personality. And if there is still interest in the first generation, by the second, third, or fourth, it becomes increasingly difficult. We don't live in a civilization that has the habit of ancestor worship. That is long gone. We've lost sight of that. So, having the awareness that we as personalities are transient, and all these things we kill and die for, sometimes even more fleeting than we are. The concern of seeking something within us that endures. If I behaved like a human being, if I left a human mark on the world, if I added value to the world, nothing. And no one can take that away from me, not even death. Therefore, build your boat. Remember this beauty. Advice from SRI Ram. When we lose this boat, our consciousness will need another one to avoid thinking. The boat of what we have done, which was eternal, of our truly human acts, that by adding value to the world, become eternal along with the journey of the world. Build your boat, add your presence to the world as a human being, your human values like justice, fraternity, kindness, and integrity. They have never ceased to exist, nor will they ever cease to exist. Remember that within yourself lies what drives you, in other words, the puppet's string. There is the voice that persuades, there is life, there truly is the human being. In other words, those intimate motivations within you, which are the puppet string of the external puppet. This external puppet is not necessarily you. The one who guides him from within, his essence, the one that watches life pass before his eyes, that is truly the human being. This string, fortunately, can be turned inward. Often it is left on the outside, and the puppet moves according to the motivations of the environment, according to the dogmas of fashion, according to standard thinking, according to hearsay. How many times do we see people moving towards what they've heard others say? It's important to place this string on the inside, in the hands of the one who truly deserves it, which is the real human being living within you. Imagine, recall a scene from your childhood, then a scene from your adolescence, your youth, and then a recent moment. Notice that in those 4 moments, your physical body, it wasn't the same. Cellular renewal was intense. The body changed. Your energy, evidently, is not the same. A child has an energy that today, just by looking at them, we get tired. Keeps recycling, renewing itself. Emotions are not the same. The emotional world has completely changed. We no longer get excited about the same things. We no longer feel the same enthusiasm for the same things. Our thinking has changed a lot. We no longer think like the adolescent, nor like the child, and sometimes not even like that adult for those who are a bit older. In other words, if all these things have changed, who is the observer behind it all? And what assures you that it was you in those 4 moments? If you identify only with these 4 things, which are your physical body, your energy, your emotions, and your thoughts, I can tell you that those scenes were not you. If you assure me they were, it's because something remained constant in those 4 moments. That deep gaze that was watching this movie unfold before his eyes, that gaze where your consciousness resides, that gaze is you, it is the human being. It is he who should be pulling the strings of your life. And it remains. Because otherwise, each of these scenes would be a different human being. Seek what endures within you and hand over the reins of your life to it. This is the human being. Book 11. Understand the entire world, the void that surrounds it. Its form, the infinite duration, the periodic regenerations of the whole. It understands everything, knowing that our successors will see nothing new, just as our predecessors saw nothing more than we did. So much so that a man who has lived for 40 years, with even a little discernment, has somehow seen everything that has been, and everything that will be. For the past is similar to the present. You might say, well, now Marcus Aurelius has gone mad because he was riding in a chariot while I fly in a jet plane. Those before him, who knows how they traveled. Of course, many people have seen many different things. Let me tell you a story. When I first read this paragraph by Marcus Aurelius, I let out a big sigh and said, "Phew, I'm not crazy." And the feeling it gave me, exactly around the age of 40-something, life was a combinatorial analysis of a handful of components that we already knew. The exhaustion, I couldn't take it anymore. In this horizontal world, you'll notice that the covers change, the packaging changes, but behind the scenes are human beings, selfish, jealous, competitive, envious, needy. Unprepared for pain, unprepared for loss. Trying to improve, but with very few resources and too proud to learn from those who know. That's what goes on behind the scenes. If you were to step behind the scenes of the most primitive man you can imagine, of the most primitive sapiens you can imagine, that's what you'd find. Of the Roman man, that's it. Of the modern man, that's it. When I was a teenager, I was so curious to travel the world, thinking that somewhere I would find something exceptional. Fortunately, I started studying philosophy before embarking on these journeys, because by going abroad, I was already prepared for what I was going to find. So I encountered multicolored appearances, products in the market, sometimes with slightly different packaging, sometimes the same manufacturer, just a bit curious, but with slightly different packaging. But behind it all, they were human beings living exactly the same drama. And people would ask, wow, how many new things did you see abroad? I would say, I didn't see any. What were the new things? None. Even human beings, grappling with the same dramas, disguising their struggles in slightly different ways, according to this cultural veneer. But without having resolved any of these issues, a man with a bit more depth, perhaps before the age of 40, depending on the maturity of his soul, already reaches this conclusion. There's nothing new under the sun. We're living the same things wrapped in paper, of thin paper with little coverage in a different color. If you tear the paper, you look inside and it contains the same thing. Even a man who is scared and doesn't know what he's doing in the world, not knowing how to deal with himself and those around him. And this Marcus Aurelius saw with a precision that I found impressive. I let out a deep sigh of relief and said, wow, I'm not crazy. Life is just like that. It always has been. The behind the scenes are a handful of factors. And if we don't act upon them, there's nothing new in the world. The novelty isn't in the breadth, in the horizontal. Yes, there is novelty, and it's fantastic. It's in the vertical, in the depth. To confront a true feeling, a moment when I was able to do something without ulterior motives, to recognize the authenticity of it. This is a universe. That dazzles me because I never imagined having this possibility before me. It's an absolutely new world, beyond my expectations. Each small vertical step is an unknown universe. Journey within yourself, and there you will find the new. Beyond that, you're at risk of suffering from great boredom because there's nothing new. To society was I useful, or to serve myself? May this idea always occur to you and help you persevere in doing good. Has my life been useful to myself and to society? Is my life just a mere enjoyment, or am I serving? Don't forget that everything comes into the world and has its identity defined by the service it provides to the whole. So plants define themselves by exchanging gases, by performing photosynthesis. Every being is defined by the service it provides to the whole. That human being who thinks they came just to enjoy serves no purpose. And be careful, because life has a criterion very similar to ours. She is smarter than us. We wouldn't keep something that serves no purpose. And neither would she. We might end up in the cosmic landfill. Be careful with that. Did I serve? Did I serve someone today? Did I think of a group a little larger than myself? Did I serve humanity? Even if it's with a phrase, a word. I met a philosopher who said that at night, when he lay down, he would ask himself, did I do something good, something useful? If the answer was no, he would get up and do something small. He would clean some object. He would say any word to someone, in other words. Don't let the day end without our life having justified its presence, having served. I read Khalil Gibran talking about this when he speaks about work, which is one of the most beautiful things written on the subject. Wasn't it evident that no other condition is more favorable? The practice of the philosophy of what acts currently. Isn't that obvious to you? For an obvious reason, you are standing Iona right in front of me listening. If you weren't ready to listen, you wouldn't hear. They'll do it later. Later, life only gets more complicated, not simpler. I've already told you the story that I taught for many years, for teenagers who would come with their pimples on their faces, their backpacks on their shoulders, and say, Professor, this is really good, but I'm not going to do this now. Let me pass my college entrance exam. Let me sort out my life as a university student. Then I'll start working to counter criticism, or something like that. 10 years later, when they were, I don't know, graduating from university, or graduated, already in a relationship, maybe with their first child, do you think it was easier than when they were 15, 25? And at 35, with that teenage child, demanding more attention, needing more resources, in a competitive world, needing to update professionally, is it any easier? And at 45, and at 55, do you think there's any moment more favorable to do what you must than the moment when your conscience calls? This duty? Because if you believe in Marcus Aurelius, he says that nothing happens to a person that is not inherent to them. Therefore, if nature has brought you this duty now, it's because this is the moment for you to understand and live it. It didn't come before its time, it came at the right moment. Probably other times won't be impossible, but they will be much more difficult than this one. In general, life doesn't simplify. We must do what is ours to do, at the moment our conscience touches the duty that has been given to us. The moment we understand what we must do as human beings. Nothing is more hateful than false friendship. Avoid it above all. The good man, simple and benevolent. Show through your gaze what it is without the need for explanation. This is a very beautiful thing, and it reminds me a lot. A book by Nietzsche called The Genealogy of Morals, where he spoke. A very interesting thing is that a noble person is not defined by saying no to others, but by a powerful yes to themselves. He never worried about seeing what others were doing in the sense of being Socratic or envious, but he focused on looking at his own life and saying, yes, I have potential, what I did is good, I can develop it, I can be better. His gaze towards others was a collaborative one, in the sense of seeing what is good in the other, helping in the other's successful endeavors. He didn't have a resentful, envious, or hateful gaze towards what others did. He didn't have that mediocrity, that mediocre gaze of not wanting to do and hating the one who does, but maintaining an excellent appearance of friendship and having subterfuges, having murky paths to reach you, to manifest their envy. So the one who seems to be the most friendly to you, who supports you the most, but deep down harbors that bitterness about you moving forward. And he doesn't. And he exercises this bitterness not in an open manner, because if he did it openly, everything could be resolved, but through subterfuges, where he goes, like in a game of dominoes, pushes this piece, which pushes that piece, which pushes another piece, and eventually it reaches you. Be careful. Let us cultivate a certain honesty towards ourselves. Well, I have this bad feeling. I will be honest with myself. What I should do is work to become better and admire those who lead the way, setting the example. We need to have the sensitivity to notice when that seed of mediocrity starts to grow within us. Because we are all susceptible, from time to time, to feel that little twinge of discomfort in the face of someone else's success. And continue with the friendship, continue with the contact, suppressing it. This creates the most poisonous of social relationships. It is a privilege to be with one another, but only when we truly are. A powerful yes to our values, and a total rejection of these seeds of mediocrity, which, if we are not careful, sprout within us in all directions. Whenever anger or impatience takes hold of you, remember that human life is but a moment, and soon we will all be beneath the earth. Knowing that it is not the actions of others that trouble us, but our opinion about them. So suppress and learn to change the opinion you have formed about these acts, and your anger will disappear. This evidently Marco is inspired by Epictetus. Epictetus wisely says actions are neutral. The reaction of each human being to these events is different. Some feel hatred, others are indifferent, and some feel pleasure. Therefore, the reaction is not due to the fact itself, but to each human being's ability to respond to it. The facts themselves are neutral. The more I understand the nature of things and anticipate what is inherent to each, the less I am susceptible to being shaken by them. I know that a jackfruit tree can have its fruits fall to the ground while still green and spoil, or they can ripen to the point of being harvested. I will get annoyed whether they fell or stayed on the jackfruit tree. This is all inherent to the jackfruit tree. I know that human nature is susceptible to being corrupted by envy, by competition, by weaknesses of all kinds. I know it can remain healthy and can behave in such a way. Healthy, which is one of the most beautiful fruits of the earth, a healthy and mature man. I am prepared for both circumstances. Since the dawn of time, I am prepared to understand that the world is dual. I must go out into the world prepared for duality, and not let either of these two faces of duality rule over me and dictate what I should be. I will remain human, no matter what comes, no matter what duality presents to me. Isn't it curious that only your intelligent part is rebellious and complains about the position it was assigned in your life? Whenever it rebels against any fact, the soul abandons its position, created as it was for holiness and piety, no less than for justice. The soul, in the sense of anima, that which animates us, that which at this moment gives us iona, which is our reason, our more practical reason, we must develop the higher one. This more practical reason is the only one that rebels against events. Look, it's cold. The body only asks that you cover it better, but it keeps on living, continuing its biological processes, does not rebel. energies, perhaps they need to be expended a bit more slowly, but they continue to respond to your call. They do not rebel. Now, the mind rebels, and with that, it also involves emotions, because emotions are nothing more than an echo of your thoughts. Then, reason begins to ask, why this? Why shouldn't that be like this? When it lacks the elements to know what should be, and judges without those elements, it wants to project what should be when it doesn't even know, in fact, what it should think, do, and say in the next minute. This acceptance of things as they are by the mind is a sign that you have moved to another mental level. You not only understood, but you accepted life as it is, and understood that all these things are necessary for your growth. And you began to perceive and think about what best you can do with things as they are, and not as you would like them to be. There lies the threshold of truly human reason, of elevated, noble reason, what the Hindus call manas. One cannot always be the same person if their life lacks a single and unwavering purpose. Even so, that won't be enough if we don't clarify what that purpose should be. Seems like a silly phrase, right? Perhaps it's one of the most important in this chapter, and perhaps of the book. You're on a pyramid with multiple faces. Climb up the one that aligns most with your nature, the one whose opportunity life opens up to you more, in a more pressing way at this moment. But don't forget that whichever face you traverse, your goal is the apex of the pyramid, that apex where we all meet, which is the fullness of the human condition. People ask me, I don't know how to choose an ideal. It's a good thing you don't know, because you don't need to. The human ideal is already chosen. You need to become a fully realized human being, with values, virtues, and wisdom. All other things are merely means. In this sense, they can be better or worse means, but all of them, if you know how to use them, are means that help you grow. Sometimes we spend our entire lives parked on one face of the pyramid, dreaming of another, when, in fact, if life placed us there, perhaps it's the path of least resistance for us to ascend. Life isn't important because you're on one side or the other. Life is important because you are climbing, and your reactions show whether you are climbing or not. Because the person who climbs towards the peak of the pyramid is getting closer and closer. From the perspective of understanding, of being able to help all those who are climbing on other sides. Because those who climb are more united, while those who descend are more separated. This is pure geometry. We are becoming more selfish, more distant from each other in our hearts, even while adhering to the formalities of a well-behaved society. We are not growing as human beings, and no formality withstands a moment of crisis where the animalistic nature emerges from beneath this thin cover and comes to Iona with all its violence. We are growing. If we are taking steps towards the human ideal, this can be done on any side. If you are becoming more distant, more selfish, more focused only on your own interests, be careful. No matter how wonderful the side you find yourself on, you are descending. Epictetus says, there is no thief who can steal our will. Here is Marcus Aurelius quoting Epictetus. Look at this beautiful thing. There is no doubt that Marcus Aurelius regards Epictetus and Seneca as great masters. And here he directly quotes his master. There is no thief who can steal our will. In other words, this reminds me, I can't help but remember, another author I deeply love, which is Khalil Gibran. When he talks about dwellings, he says, why do you worry so much about locking up your dwelling? What do you have so precious inside? Do you have kindness, precious one? Do you have the generosity of gold? Do you have courage? Do you have the will? If you have nothing of value, what do you fear being stolen from you? This is very fitting, and it reminds you very well of White. Wonderful realization sometimes not valued enough in our days. There are no thieves for the will. There are no thieves for will, love, and intelligence, which, according to Paiseo, are the three great virtues from which all others emanate. There are no thieves for human value. And knowing that the most precious things we have are inalienable gives us a great sense of serenity. If we listen to the opinions of these great men of history, not even death is capable of stealing these things from us, because they do not belong to the realm of death. And if they reside within us, there is something immortal within us. Book 12. Whether the end of your life is near or far, if you set aside any other concern and focus solely on honoring the principal and divine part of your being. Fear. The only fear should be that you have not yet begun to live according to your nature. Then you will be a man worthy of the world that gave birth to you, and no longer a stranger in your own homeland. Recognize the value of this. Well, I'm of an advanced age. At my age, sometimes people write to me saying this. I loved philosophy, but at my age, it's no longer possible. Why is it not possible? If we consider that moment when our consciousness, touching wisdom, a part of it, a small piece seeking wisdom, is the moment when we are ready to understand it. It's the best moment in the world. Everything we've done up to this point was to bring us here. And if we start to walk guided by this wisdom from now on, this piece of life that belongs to us, it, however long it is, a year, 2 years, who knows how long, it can be more valuable than the entire life of many people who lived for nothing. A single day of life lived with dignity justifies an entire existence. And sometimes many years, a long life, without any human value, doesn't fulfill its purpose, doesn't leave its mark on earth. Never think that it's too late. The moment when consciousness touches a small piece of wisdom, this is the moment to act, however long it may be. How much time do I have left? You see, sometimes people I know the value that exists in youth, they fall into a complex alienation. The young person is worth more than the elderly because they have 50 years ahead of them. The elderly person, who sometimes has 5 years ahead or 1 year ahead, can do more for humanity than this young person who has 50 years ahead without ever awakening. If you've awakened a breath of life, it can be a gift to humanity. It can be worth more than the long life of many. Don't think life is so mathematical like that. That's an alienation. God sees souls in their purity, free from material shells and coverings. By its pure intelligence, it only communicates with what? In them, it emanates and flows from within themselves. When you get used to doing the same, you will greatly reduce your worries. In other words, God only communicates with that piece of God that exists within you. When that piece of God that exists within you is awake, active, it knows how to speak, it knows how to listen. Therefore, if you want to communicate with Him, stop the chatter of your personality and discover the peace of God that exists within you. How do you discover it? Through its attributes. How do we know a being? By knowing if they are good, just, honest, noble. That's how we know a being. Do you want to know God within you? Look for where your pure, genuine attributes are within you. Know God within you. Then you establish contact. I remember once again Ibram when he talks about prayer. It's no use if you bow down. No one will lift you up. God does not hear your words unless He Himself speaks them through your voice. Read this in Gibran's prophet, the prayer. God does not hear your words unless He Himself speaks them through your voice. Be your inner God, which is of the same essence and nature as the Absolute. Find it, that is the inner life. Whoever finds it and casts a spark of this inner God upon the world has illuminated the world. And it doesn't matter if it was just a single day of life. Thinks it made a difference. First and foremost, do nothing by chance and without purpose. Then accept nothing that does not serve all of humanity. First of all, don't waste your energy on things that don't help you take a step towards your ideal. Understand this. You have to consider this in a broad and mature way. Does resting, having leisure, having adequate sleep contribute to moving me towards my ideal? Yes, that is necessary. This is part of maintaining your physical, psychological, and even mental body. This is necessary. These things are not a waste as long as they don't cheapen you. You don't need to stop being human to have fun. There are ways to have fun while being human. I assure you there are. There are ways to rest without surrendering to rest, to the point of turning it into laziness. Do all these things in a noble and human way, in the right measure, but do them truly with body and soul. I assure you that a man who has a firm, mature identity, who walks towards his ideal when he says, "Time to have fun," he enjoys himself more than anyone else. In fact, he is capable of providing a much more genuine and profound enjoyment to the people around him. When it's time to rest, he rests better than anyone else, the sleep of the just, without guilt, without uncertainties. Do everything necessary without giving up your human condition. But don't waste time on things that aren't necessary for your human condition. They only waste your life's energy and drag you down. Don't hand weapons to the enemy. Don't waste time in a life that is, let's not forget, quite fleeting. The man who moves in the same direction and towards the same ends as God is divine. Look at this beautiful, wonderful thing. Where does God move towards? So that all things return in unity. All things return to the Father's house with arms full of fruits. It was the learning, the maturity, the awareness they gathered along the way. God moves towards the complete maturity of the universe. His work. God remains in unity, drawing all his children to return home. If you move towards unity, to that point where all your potentials connect, unite, and make you a human being, complete, you are on the same path as God. And when we are on the same path as God, remember that wonderful saying, a man with God is a majority. A bit of the power of the whole flows into the part. When this part works in harmony with everything. Think of a hand. A hand is a marvelous mechanism of physical human nature. Can do 1,000 things. But isolated from the body, what could a hand do? Now, a hand connected to my forearm, to my arm, to my body, to my torso, to my head, to my feet. It can conduct an orchestra, it can paint a Iona Lisa, it can sculpt a Pieta, it can heal a serious illness, it can do wonderful things. We are a part that can achieve wonders when we have the same purpose and walk in the same direction as the whole. And thus were the great men of history made. To those who ask where the gods are, how do you know they exist for you to worship them? Answer. First of all, the gods are visible even to our physical eyes, through their works and their attributes, of course. Then, I've never seen my soul, and yet I revere it. This is the procedure regarding the gods. I deduce from the facts that daily reveal their power to you, and I conclude that they exist and I worship them. So, when I, at a certain moment, help someone without any ulterior motive, when I help a little plant that's in the middle of the path, trampled upon, when I do something that I realize has no desire for display, I realize where this impulse for good is emanating from. There is something within me that holds these puppet strings. I perceive through the works, by your deeds, I will know you. Perceive my soul, more elevated, more noble, more pure, and I revere it. When I see the harmony and beauty in every corner of the world, when I learn from the symbolism of all things in the world, it's obvious that I realize these strings are in someone's hands. I deduce from their works. Even my physical eyes are capable of seeing. Therefore, be wary of these useless dialectics that our mind produces. We have to learn to see things through their works, through their footprints, because much of what resides within us, even physically, we are not capable of seeing. And yet we know it exists. For a long time, the senses have ceased to be a reliable testimony for us to know that things exist. Otherwise, science, for example, would not have advanced. And so we conclude, what a wonderful thing. We went through Marcus Aurelius' meditations in their entirety, discussing and exchanging ideas. Don't think I'm exaggerating. It's truly a wonderful work, and it's a very special moment when we gather, sit down, and share all these reflections. I hope it serves as a precious guide for your life. Those things we carry with us throughout life, always going back and remembering. Wow, this is important. This is a mast, which I hold on to when the storms come. Books of this kind were made for that, to be a firmly planted mast, where you hold on when the storms come. Evolve, yes. Grow, but expand around this mast. Don't forget it. This is a mast-seeking wisdom, and it's good that it is always at the center of all your actions. Thank you very much. And enjoy.